I can never wait when the countdown is sitting there, counting down the last minute. It drives me crazy. But yeah, definitely, I'd like to know your setup, Scooter Mom. Um, I watched a guy who told me about some inexpensive mics and arms too. So I would like to get into that eventually because hopefully soon I'll be able to turn the AC off because I know you guys can hear it in the background. The blower is right there, and no matter if it's low, medium, or high, it makes the same amount of noise, and I can't turn it off. Poe did tell me about a better mic, though. It would require either a lot of saving up or a sugar daddy. Well, the guy I watched, um, he did inexpensive mics, so it's like under $100, and arms too. This guy he's been doing it a while, and he's used different mics. He's used a lot of different arms. Hi, Susan. So, um, because the mic that he suggested was not the one I can't remember the two kinds, but this one doesn't need a mixer, the one he suggested. And I'm not tech savvy enough to want to deal with all that. So I usually just chat for about 5 minutes to let people come in, and then we'll start. That's 99 today. Yep, we'll be wearing t-shirts on Halloween, I'm sure. But oh, I figured out what's wrong with me. It is allergies, but I have chronic sinus infections from allergies. And I realized I have a sinus infection. So I'm going to have to make an appointment. Oh, it takes a little while. And sometimes then it'll also go in my throat. Then I'll get a sore throat. Then I get bronchitis. So I got to get on this before it goes down. Because then I won't be able to talk at all. I know the world could not survive without me talking. I'd have to do the silent protest. You know what? If that happens, if I lose my voice, which I probably will this winter, I'll just put the tape on my mouth and do the silent protest. Oh, that'll be funny. I'm going to do that because I know every year I get at least one really bad bout of flu or bronchitis. So, although the last few years, and it's not because of COVID, I was a germaphobe before that, but after COVID, I have sanitizer everywhere, all over the car, hooked to, look, I even got, it matches my phone case. Always have on my keys. And since I've been doing that and wiping off carts, I actually haven't got a bad flu the last couple years. Now, I don't go out that much, at least before I started protesting. So that probably helped. I used Milmed's sinus rinse. It's gross, but it works. It's okay. I have a neti pot, actually, that I've used in the past. I should try that first before I have to go. Because even if I call the doctor, because it's the Army hospital, it'll probably be weeks before they get me in. It's so different than when I had off-post appointment doctors. If you were sick, they kept same-day appointments open or next-day appointments open for people that had like an emergency or were really, really sick. No, they don't do that at the clinic. Oh, okay. But is there a different solution? Because I just use sea salt. Okay, but this is something you add to distilled warm water. I'm going to write it down. Let me write that down. Mealmed sinus rinse. Yeah, my husband can't put water in his nose at all. He hates water. He was a cat in his last life. He can't do it. Doesn't bother me at all. As a matter of fact, so okay, I've got distilled water because I have an ice maker, so that'll work. And it took me a while to find out not to use tap water because there can be bacteria in your lines or in the water lines, and you could be just making things worse. I just found that out like a year ago. All right, so it's been 5 minutes. So we've got 2 short chapters today. I'm actually way more curious in the second one. But this is why I like talking to people about what's going on, because I get really, really good suggestions. That's what having friends are for. All right. My book, I don't know if I showed you guys, my book is falling apart. So the spine, luckily we read that part already. So I probably won't be reading this a second time. Matter of fact, did you guys see the short? Oh, Neomed. Oh, okay. Got it. Okay. Got it. Alrighty. I will get it. All right. I have eyelashes that are sticking together, bugging the crap out of me. Sorry. Alrighty. If I put too much mascara on, they touch the glasses. Oh, wrong glasses. All right. We're going to get this right. Okay. So the last chapter we read, we just started book 3 called Therapy, which surprised me. And we just did the mind's protection. I like to read like the last paragraph when we start, and at the end I read the first paragraph of the next chapter. So we ended with Dianetics drops into line without disturbing anything concerned with staffs or research or teaching posts. For psychology is simply the study of the psyche, and now that there exists a science of the psyche, it can go ahead with a will. Thus, Dianetics is the enemy of none, and Dianetics falls utterly outside all existing legislation, none of which anticipated or made any provision for a science of the mind. I thought that was interesting, real quick, that he was talking about legislation, because there was, I don't remember which country, it was in stuff I was researching, that it was either the e-meter or something that they the powers that be put a sanction on them because they were using something as a medical device that they didn't have the training or licensing for, which I thought was interesting. So he already started with that in here, trying to make sure he didn't get in trouble. All right, so now we're in chapter 2 called Release or Clear. So I don't know exactly what that's we know what clear means. Let's go on. All right. The object let me try again. The object of Dianetic therapy is to bring about a release or a clear. A release, noun, is an individual from whom major stress and anxiety have been removed by Dianetic therapy. Okay, it's a noun. A clear, noun, is an individual who, as a result of Dianetic therapy, has neither active nor potential psychosomatic illness or aberration. So a release is it like a lower than a clear then? Like it's a step towards clear? Free from major stress and anxiety have been removed by Dianetic therapy. It sounds like it's a step. You're not quite to clear yet. All right. To clear, verb, is to release all the physical pain and painful emotion from the life of an individual, or, as in political Dianetics, a society. The result of this will bring about persistence in the 4 dynamics, optimum analytical ability for the individual, and, with that, all recall. The experience of his entire life is available to the clear, and he has all his inherent mental ability, and imagination free to use it. His physical vitality and health are markedly improved, and all psychosomatic illnesses have vanished and will not return. He has greater resistance to actual disease, and he is adaptable to and able to change his environment. He is not adjusted, he is dynamic. His ethical and moral standards are high. Well, we all disagree with that. His ability to seek and experience pleasure is great. His personality is heightened, and he is creative and constructive. It is not yet known how much longevity is added to a life in the process of clearing, but in view of the automatic rebalancing of the endocrine system, the lowered incidence of accident, and the improvement of general physical tone, it is most certainly raised. The stuff that he promises. A release is an individual from whom have been released the current or chronic mental and physical difficulties and painful emotion. The value of a release when compared to a clear may not at first thought be considered great. May not at first thought be considered great. But when one understands that a release is usually in excess of the contemporary norm in mental stability, it can be seen that the condition is not without great value. Kind of the same thing you would get from regular therapy. As a standard of comparison, a clear is to the contemporary norm as the contemporary norm is to a contemporary institutional case. The margin is wide, and it would be difficult to exaggerate it. Really? A clear, for instance, has complete recall of everything which has ever happened to him or anything he has ever studied. Side note, the reason Dianetics failed 3 months after he published it in 1950 is he had a room full of people, and I believe there were psychiatrists and things like that in the audience. And he had a woman on the stage who was supposed to be a clear and could memorize everything. And when she couldn't even remember the color of LRH's tie, everybody got up and walked out. So just a side note on that. He does mental computations such as those of chess, for example, which a normal would do in half an hour, in 10 or 15 seconds. He does not think vocally, but spontaneously. There are no demon circuits in his mind except those which it might amuse him to set up and break down again to care for various approaches to living. That doesn't make any sense. He is entirely self-determined, and his creative imagination is high. He can do a swift study of anything within his intellectual capacity, which is inherent, and the study would be the equivalent to him of a year or two of training when he was normal. His vigor, persistence, and tenacity to life are very much higher than anyone thought possible. Scooter Mom, what? Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Yeah, Sonia Bianca. Thank you. You're on it. So, 3 months after he published it and opened all these Dianetics centers, it flopped. But they still had some centers open. They still had some people going. But a lot of articles came out against it after, and even I don't know how long it took the psychiatrist that signed off on his book to turn his back on him. I think it was pretty quick. The objection that it is dangerous to create too many clears in a society is a thoughtless one. The clear is rational. The acts which damage a society are irrational. That a handful of clears could probably handle any number of normals is within reason, but that the clear would handle them to their detriment is unreasonable. The more clears a society possessed, the more chance that society would have to prosper. That a clear is unambitious is not proven out by scientific observation, for the curve of dwindling ambition follows the curve of reducing rationality, and those who have been cleared have proven the matter by reactivating all their skills toward goals they had once desired, but had begun to consider unattainable when norms, period. That's a weird sentence. That a clear is in some degree separated from the norm is attributable to the gulf between their respective mental abilities. For he has achieved solutions and conclusions before the norm has begun to form an idea of what to conclude. This does not make a clear intolerable to the norm, for the clear has none of that superiority attitude, which is actually a product of engrams. This is a quick glance at the state of being clear, but the state cannot be described. It has to be experienced to be appreciated. The whole time I was reading that, I was thinking of Tom Cruise. I was literally picturing Tom Cruise when he said only a Scientologist can help. The way he carries himself, the way he talks, the way he does things. The superiority thing is there, sorry. He really believes this stuff. Well, a lot of Scientologists do. But yeah, I was totally just picturing him. Oh, okay, Cinderella, thank you. His prose is the run-on, rundown. There are so many commas in these sentences. It's ridiculous. Okay. A release is a somewhat variable quantity. Anyone well advanced on the road to clear is a release. There is no comparison between a clear and anything man has before believed obtainable, and there is no comparison between clearing and any therapy hitherto practiced. In the case of the release, only is there a basis of comparison between Dianetics and past therapies such as psychoanalysis and any other. A release can be effected in a few weeks. The resulting condition will be at least equivalent to that following 2 years of psychoanalysis, with the difference that the release has a guarantee of permanent results and no guarantee of success has ever been made by psychoanalysis. A release does not relapse into any pattern which has been relieved. These are the two goals of the Dianetic Auditor, clear and release. It is not known at this writing how long is the average time to raise the institutionally insane into the neurotic level. It has been done in 2 hours, it has been done in 10, and in some cases it has required 200. He had some notes on it. They're not relevant. The Dianetic Auditor should determine beforehand in any case whether he wishes to attempt a release or a clear. He can achieve either with anyone not organically insane, missing or seared portions of the brain bringing about insanity, mainly genetic or iatrogenic, and relatively rare except in institutions. But he should make an estimate of the amount of time he can invest in any one person and regulate his intention accordingly and announce it to his patient. The two goals are slightly different. In a release, one does not attempt entrance into phases of the case, which will or may bring about a necessity of long work, and gives his attention to the location and release of emotional charge. In clearing, the auditor gives his attention to the location of the basic engram. The discharge of emotion and the entire engram bank. There is a third goal, which could be considered a subhead of a release. This is an assist. It is done after injury or illness following the injury or illness just sustained in order to promote more rapid recovery, to assist the body in its rehabilitation after injury or illness. This is specialized therapy, which will probably be practiced commonly enough, but is of primary benefit to the medical doctor who, with it, can save lives and speed healing by releasing the engram of that particular illness or injury, thus removing the various engram conceptions which the furtherance of the injury restimulates. Any Dianetic auditor can practice this. The assist has about the same level of usefulness as a faith-healing miracle which would work every time. Estimations of the amount of time the case will require are difficult to attain with any accuracy greater than 50%, and it should be understood by the patient that the time in therapy is variable. It depends in a measure upon the skill of the auditor, the number of unsuspected engrams never hitherto reactivated, and the amount of restimulation to which the patient is subject during therapy. Therefore, the auditor should not be optimistic in estimating time, but should make his patient understand that greater or lesser time may be consumed in the therapy. How much you want to bet it's always more? Because you pay per hour when you're getting auditing? It's my understanding. Any person who is intelligent and possessed of average persistency and who is willing to read this book thoroughly should be able to become a Dianetic auditor. I want to be one. I'm joking. When he has cleared 2 or 3 cases, he will have learned far more and understood far more than is contained in this book. For there is nothing which develops an understanding of a machine like handling it in action. This is the instruction book. The machine in question is ready to hand wherever there are men. Contrary to superstition about the mind, it is almost impossible to permanently injure the mechanism. It can be done with an electric shock or a scalpel or an ice pick, but it is almost impossible to do it with Dianetic therapy. Bye, Susan. Oh, Irish is here. Hello. Woo. Wow. Again, the whole time I was reading that, I was thinking of Tom Cruise. By the way, that was the end of the chapter. And people like him, that he really believes that he can be healed by a touch assist, and that, you can only fix things through Scientology. Well, Dianetics then, Scientology now. Me too. Yeah, it hurt my brain. And the fact he's making it sound so easy to become an auditor, but we know that actually it's not that easy. Auditor training is horrible. I wonder if auditor training, how that evolved from the Dianetics time into the Scientology. And I've heard from John Atack that things did change. That L Ron Hubbard did change the way they did things after years. Like he thought of a different way or wanted to change it or take something out or add something in. So he did do those things. Because you got to figure Scientology early on was, he was creating it, I would think. So, next chapter. So he talked about auditors in that chapter. So after the auditor's role, we're not going to do it, is diagnosis. That's going to be interesting. I mean, this has actually been a little bit more interesting. So, just to think about, like, picturing Tom Cruise the whole time reading it and really understanding his thought processes. 2 years ago, when I was first looking at Scientology, I didn't quite understand. I knew of the abuses, I knew of what people went through, but through time and reading this and talking to survivors and all of that together and listening to them, you really get an idea as a never end, what they're really thinking and what they really believe and why they do the things they do. Why, Mike Brown's mom didn't go get her heart taken care of until she collapsed. Oh, John Atack said that David Miscavige had an assistant or something, somebody at work right next to him. And she had an endoscopy, I don't know if that word's wrong, and pregnancy. I think where it's outside in the fallopian tube, or it's just wrong. Well, she was in pain for 2 months. And he knew it. And he finally got so bad that she went to the doctor. And you might want to mute. I'm going to say something a little gory. When she got to the doctor, there was an explosion of blood. And he told her she should have been dead a month prior. Because they scare you to death about going to the doctor, or they don't provide medical care. If they would just provide the basic medical care, it would change a lot. All right, the auditor's role. I have to talk about the chapter a bit because I don't want them to get me on reading the whole thing online. So that's why I interject here and there, just to make sure that I'm doing that. The purpose of therapy and its sole target is the removal of the content of the reactive engram bank. In a release, the majority of emotional stress is deleted from this bank. In a clear, the entire content is removed. That made a little bit more sense. He said it simply, understandably. Now I really get it. The application of a science is an art. That is true of any science. The efficacy of its application depends upon the understanding, skill, and ability of whoever applies it. The chemist has a science of chemistry, and yet the profession of being a chemist is an art. The engineer may have behind him the precision of all the physical sciences, and yet the practice of engineering is an art. I would disagree on the engineering one. You have to be pretty precise. Ectopic. Yes, that's what it was. Thank you. Ectopic pregnancy. Yes, she was very lucky. Dianetics is extremely simple. Yeah, I'm going to underline that. Dianetics is extremely simple. Reading it is not. This does not mean that cases cannot be extremely complicated. To cover one case for each kind of case in this book would necessitate 2 billion cases, and that would only encompass the current population. Wow. So wow. We've got a lot more people than that now. For each man is a great deal different from every other man. His inherent personality is different. His composite of experience is different, and his dynamics are of different strength. The only constant is the mechanism of the reactive engram bank, and that alone does not vary. The content of that bank is different from man to man, both in quantity and intensity, but the mechanism of operation of the bank and therefore the basic mechanisms of Dianetics are constant from man to man, and were in every age and will be in every future age until man evolves into another organism. The target is the engram. It is also the target of the patient's analytical mind and the patient's dynamics as he tries to live his life. It is the target of the auditor's analytical mind and the auditor's dynamics. So bracketed and salvoed, it gives up its store of engrams. Now he's got definitions. Bracket, we kind of get to place shots both short of the target and beyond it in order to find the range. Salvo, fire at with a number of guns or artillery pieces at one time. Yeah, I figured that. So bracketed and salvoed, it gives up its store of engrams. Oh, hi, Red. This should be extremely plain to any auditor. The amount he relaxes from the position of auditor and forgets the target, he garners trouble, which will consume his time. The moment he makes the error of thinking that the person, the analytical mind, or the dynamics of the patient are resisting, trying to stop therapy, or giving up, the auditor has made the fundamental and primary error in the practice of Dianetics. Almost anything that goes wrong can be traced back to this error. It cannot be too emphatically stated that the analytical mind and the dynamics of the patient never, never, never resist the auditor. The auditor is not there to be resisted. He has no concern with resistance from anything except the patient's and sometimes his own engrams. So, my thoughts on that page is this. He's saying an auditor can make an error, and that if anything goes wrong, it's the auditor's fault. Yet, he also says, I assume to be an auditor, you have to be clear. So, or working on it. So, he says, going clear, that you can control your surroundings and you have control over all of you can use all of your mind. What am I trying to say? That you shouldn't be able to make errors is what I'm getting at. But yet he's saying here that the auditor can make an error, and that if auditing goes wrong, it's the auditor's fault. That was just a thought that I had while reading it. That he does kind of contradict himself a lot. Okay, Susan. Well, thanks for being here for a little while. Appreciate it. All right. The auditor is not there as the patient's driver or advisor. He is not there to be intimidated by the patient's engrams or be frightened by their aspects. Okay, that's where we've heard about how an auditor can't leave. They have to listen to everything the patient. Now I call them a patient. I bet they don't anymore. What do they call the person in auditing? Do they call him a patient? I've never heard that word used. They just say, "Well, we were in auditing." Anyway, that's why they go through that horrible training, so that sitting there, nothing is supposed. They bully. If you haven't heard about it, Aaron talked about it that day. I went to my protesting angry, and I had an ugly cry when he posted that video of the 12-year-old auditing the adult. And then he explained in detail what they go through in auditor training. They literally, the person in charge will go to like the dark web and find the most horrible things and make the trainer say those to the trainee, to the point where, and they do it and scream at them, and until they can show no emotion. That's not necessarily a good thing. They're really, more often than not, traumatizing them to a point that they shut down. They just shut down. They don't react anymore. That's not necessarily a good thing. Audit slave. Yes. Yeah, I haven't heard that word used either. Like, he's using the word therapy in here too. He's working his way into jumping from getting them off of regular therapy into Dianetics and calling it therapy, calling it a patient. And then in Scientology, that all gets dropped, I think. So, yeah. So, I'm going to read that again. The auditor is not there as the patient's driver or advisor. He is not there to be intimidated by the patient's engrams or be frightened by their aspects. He is there to audit and only to audit. If he feels that he is called upon to be lordly to the patient, then the auditor had better change chair for couch, because he has a case of authoritarianism coming into view. The word auditor is used, not operator or therapist, because it is a cooperative effort between the auditor and the patient, and the law of affinity is at work. The patient cannot see his own aberrations. That is one of the reasons why the auditor is there. The patient needs to be bolstered to face the unknowns of his life. That is another reason the auditor is there. The patient would not dare address the world which has gotten inside him and turn his back upon the world that is outside him unless he has a sentry. That is another reason the auditor is there. Yet, I do think I have heard a few people feel like getting auditing is more of an interrogation, and they don't like it, and they don't feel safe when they're getting auditing. Just, I don't know if that's everywhere, but I've heard that talked about. I think that's where the term pre-clear comes in. They might call it that now. Yeah, they call it something. We need one of our survivors in here. Oh, by the way, I put in the comments last week, and if you see any of them, AA or CC, that were in my chat last week, I wish I wouldn't have been so focused on the chapter we read, talking with them. I wanted to talk with them. I should have talked to them some more. I have questions that maybe they. So I was thinking about anybody in my chats, or anybody, having them come on, not face or voice even if they don't want to, but just in a chat, and do like a Q&A. And if they're willing to do that, that would be awesome. I'll put it on my community page too. All right. Maybe he'll explain it in a minute. Sometimes every time I do that, he explains it later. The auditor's job is to safeguard the person of the patient during therapy, to compute the reasons why the patient's mind cannot reach into the engram bank, to strengthen the patient's nerve, and to get those engrams. There is a three-way case of affinity at work. This moment, let me say that again. All right, let me read that sentence again. I'm having trouble with my eyes today. They're watery and a little blurry. That's why I'm missing words. Short words. Let me try that again. Where was it? Okay. There is a three-way case of affinity at work this moment. I am in affinity with the auditor. I am telling him all that has been discovered and is in practice in Dianetics, and I want him to succeed. The auditor is in affinity with the patient. He wants the patient to attack engrams. The patient is in affinity with the auditor because with minimal work, that patient is going to get better, and with persistence lent him by the auditor plus his own will become a release or a clear. There are even more affinities at work, a vast network of them. This is a cooperative endeavor. I'm not quite understanding the word affinities. I did at first until he said, I want to see what he says. I kind of got it at first, but then he had to keep talking. There it is. Affinity. Emotion. Breaking of. Define. Oh. Okay, that's not what I wanted. Here we go. And there it is. Affinity. The attraction which exists between two human beings or between a human being and another life organism. Well, that's what I got, but he said it weird. All right. The engram bank is the target, not the patient. If the patient swears and moans and weeps and pleads, those are engrams talking. After a while, the engrams that make him swear and moan and weep and plead will be discharged and refiled. The patient, in whatever state, knows full well that the action taken is necessary. If the auditor is so short of rationality that he mistakes this swearing or moaning as something directed at him personally, that auditor had better change places with the patient and undergo therapy. So, is the patient really getting better? Or is the auditor... I need to watch those streams that did when they were showing auditing. But what I want to know is not like the mechanism of auditing, but how the auditor acts. Like, are they bullying the patient into stopping the moaning and pleading and crying? Or are they talking with them? Like, are they really trying to help? Or are they just trying to stamp out the emotions? Those are questions I have. Just in auditing in general, just curious. And it's like, or do different auditors do it differently, just like different therapists do different? Yeah, I imagine it's the bullying. That's what I think, because the auditor has already been trained to show no emotion. They've been bullied, and they've literally been bullied into showing no emotion. So, but I've heard people say that they don't have anything to tell the auditor, really. So they'll make stuff up just to make it look like they fixed something. I think get rid of emotions and make them submissive. That's what I think, because Aaron did say he hated auditing. He tried not to get it as much as possible. So it doesn't sound like it's the greatest thing. Because I was thinking in my head, if they were trying to help, if they were really talking to the patient in a therapy type way, it would be maybe the one positive thing in Scientology that they're doing. So that's why I'm kind of curious as to how a real auditing might go. Like, not how they sit, but like what they really do to the patient. Adam, auditors probably had a modicum of autonomy until golden age of tech. Yeah, I would think. Yeah. who knows what David Miscavige has done. Okay. Where was I? The only thing which resists is the engram. When it is being restimulated, it impinges against the patient's analyzer, tends to reduce analytical power, and the patient exhibits a modified dramatization. Any auditor with two brain cells to click together will never be in any slightest danger of his person at the hands of the pre-release or pre-clear. You're right, you said it. Pre-clear. The terms pre-release and pre-clear are used to designate an individual entered into and undergoing Dianetic therapy. There, you're right. They call them pre-clear now. If the auditor wants to use hypnotism and try to run late physically painful engrams, such as operations, when early ones are available, he may find himself targeted. 1, 2, 3. 3 commas in that sentence. If the auditor suddenly gets super moral and lectures the patient, he may get involved, but again, he has done something very wrong. If the auditor snarls and snaps at the patient, he may get targeted. But once more, a fundamental error has been made. Okay, he's saying that's not okay, what we were thinking. Of course, what he says and what they do could be different. The target is the engram bank. It is the auditor's job to attack the pre-clear's engram bank. It is the pre-clear's job to attack that bank. To attack the pre-clear is to permit his engram bank to attack the pre-clear. We know that there are 5 methods of handling an engram. 4 of them are wrong. To succumb to an engram is apathy. To neglect one is carelessness. But to avoid or flee from one is cowardice. Attack, and only attack, resolves the problem. It is the duty of the auditor to make very sure that the pre-clear keeps attacking engrams, not the auditor or the exterior world. If the auditor attacks the pre-clear, that's bad gunnery and very poor logic. Okay. The engram bank is best attacked primarily by discharging its emotional charge anywhere it can be contacted. After that, it is best attacked by finding out what the pre-clear in reverie. By the way, I've been listening to a lot of John Atack. Reverie is LRH's term for hypnotized. He even talked about the eyes fluttering because they're in a state of reverie. They're literally in a state of hypnotism. That's what reverie means. After that, it is best attacked by finding out what the pre-clear in reverie thinks would happen to him if he got well, got better, found out, etc. And then it is most and always most important in any way possible to contact the primary moment of pain or unconsciousness in the patient's life. This is basic, and it's basic in italics, so it's a term. This is basic. Once an auditor has basic, the case will swiftly resolve. If the pre-clear's reactive mind is suppressing basic, then the auditor should discharge more reactive emotion. Discover the computation now in force and try again. He will eventually get basic. That's important, and that is all that is important as the pre-clear. So that pretty much said the auditor is trying to get the patient pre-clear into reverie, so they'll tell them everything that's wrong. So that's interesting. John Atack also said that LRH had many books on hypnotism, like on his bookshelf, on his nightstand, many. In the pre-release, patient working towards release only, the task is to discharge emotion and as many early engrams as will present themselves easily. The reduction of locks may be included in pre-release, but only when they lead to basic should locks be touched in a pre-clear. There are 3 levels of healing. The first is getting the job done efficiently. Below that is making the patient comfortable. Below that is sympathy. In short, if you can do nothing for a man with a broken back, you can make him comfortable. If you can't even make him comfortable, you can sympathize with him. That's an interesting paragraph. So, okay. It's just interesting that they want them to make them comfortable and they want them to sympathize. The second and third echelons above are entirely unwarranted in Dianetics. The job can be done efficiently. Making the patient here we go. Making the patient comfortable is a waste of time. I thought that he was saying something positive. I was wrong. Giving him sympathy may snarl up the entire case, for his worst engrams will be sympathy engrams, and sympathy may re-stimulate them out of place. The auditor who indulges in hand patting, I don't even know what that means, but we kind of get the gist. Oh, hand patting. Yeah, okay, I get it. No matter how much it seems to be indicated, is wasting time and slowing down the case. Undue roughness is not indicated. A friendly, cheerful, optimistic attitude will take care of everything. A pre-clear sometimes needs a grin, but he has already had more hand patting than the analyzer has been able to compute. His chronic psychosomatic illness contains sympathy in its engrams. The next thing the auditor should know and live is the auditor's code. All right. Obviously a collection of rules, do's and don'ts that an auditor follows while auditing someone. Yeah. This may sound like something from When Knighthood Was in Flower or the 13 Rituals for Heavenly Bliss in Nirvana, but unless it is employed by the auditor on his patients, the auditor will have some heavy slogging. The code is not for the comfort of the pre-clear. It is exclusively for the protection of the auditor. The auditor's code should never be violated. Practice in Dianetics has demonstrated that violation of the auditor's code alone can interrupt cases. The auditor should be courteous in his treatment of all pre-clears. The auditor should be kind, not giving way to any indulgence of cruelty towards pre-clears, nor surrendering to any desire to punish. The auditor should be quiet during therapy, not given to talk beyond the absolute essentials of Dianetics during an actual session. The auditor should be trustworthy, keeping his word when given, keeping his appointment in schedules, and his commitment to work, and never giving forth any commitment of any kind which he has any slightest reason to believe he cannot keep. The auditor should be courageous, never giving ground or violating the fundamentals of therapy because a pre-clear thinks he should. The auditor should be patient, in his working, never becoming restless or annoyed by the pre-clear, no matter what the pre-clear is doing or saying. Again, that's why they're taught to show no emotion. And they're teaching them to at least be courteous and kind and have a grin, at least. So not a complete robot. The auditor should be thorough, never permitting his plan of work to be swayed or a charge to be avoided. The auditor should be persistent, never giving up until he has achieved results. The auditor should be uncommunicative, never giving the patient any information whatsoever about his case, including evaluations of data or further estimates of time in therapy. So, you don't even know how long you're going to be in therapy, but you have to pay for this by the hour. Various conditions ensue when any of the above are violated. All violations slow therapy and cause the auditor more work. All violations come back to the detriment of the auditor. For instance, in the last, it is not part of the auditor's work to inform the pre-clear of anything. As soon as he starts doing so, the pre-clear promptly hooks the auditor into the circuit as the source of information and so avoids engrams. The auditor will see in progress the most violent and disturbing human emotions. He may be moved to sympathy, but if he has overlooked something and hindered therapy. Whenever an emotion shows, it is an emotion which will shortly be history. Whatever gyrations the pre-clear may go through, however much he may move or wrestle around, the auditor must keep firmly in mind that every moan or gyration is one step closer to the goal. That seems violent. For why be frightened or waste sympathy about something which, when it has been recounted a few times, will leave a pre-clear happier? If the auditor becomes frightened and pulls that error of all errors when a pre-clear begins to shake, come up to present time, he can be sure that the pre-clear will have a couple of bad days and that the next time the auditor wants to enter that engram, it will be blocked. If an auditor assumes the state of mind that he can sit and whistle while Rome burns before him and be prepared to grin about it, then he will do an optimum job. Wow. The things at which he gazes, no matter how they look, no matter how they sound, are solid gains. It's the quiet, orderly patient who is making few gains. This does not mean that the auditor is trying for nothing but violence, but it does mean that when he gets it, he can be cheerful and content that one more engram has lost its charge. The task of auditing is rather much a shepherd's task, herding the little sheep, the engrams into the pen for slaughter. The pre-clear isn't under the auditor's orders, but the pre-clear, if the case runs well, will do whatever the auditor wants with these engrams because the analytical mind and the dynamics of the pre-clear want that job done. The mind knows how the mind operates. Wow. Wow. No face. Hello. I'm starting to think this L Ron Hubbard guy is a real a-hole. He was. Everyone that knew him that wasn't under his sway, yeah. You think? Yeah. Because, I mean, he's making this stuff. He's not making it up out of complete thin air. He did, I think, he either spent 2 years observing or working in an institution. I actually think he might have been a patient. I'm not sure. So he studied regular psychoanalysis and psychology a bit, and he pretty much just changed terms in a lot of it to his own terms, but it's still, except for some of that stuff about the auditor, but still, like, the goal, the pre-release is still like therapy in a way. Just not therapists are kinder. He doesn't even want them to be kind. Just attack, 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 attack. Get rid of the violent engram. I haven't heard anybody say what happens if somebody gets physically violent. Are they allowed to call for help? Or they got to deal with it? Because he said if he can't deal with it, then it's the auditor's fault. So if the auditor gets physically attacked, what are they supposed to do about it? Hi, Dusty. Oh, you missed a wild one. It was the auditor's role in auditing. Very interesting short chapter. I did 2 chapters though. Wow. Like I said, if he had gone about this just a little bit differently, then there could have at least been a little bit of positivity in Scientology, where at least they were maybe really getting some help with emotional problems that they had. But he has bastardized it so bad that no, it really doesn't help. Terrifying, actually. No face, yes. Yes. Scooter Mom. They had them down, and yes, I think they get help according to when Jenna was combative. Oh, okay. Yeah, I remember that. I remember her talking about that. Okay. So if they get physical, they can have somebody come in. Because I would think they don't want to leave them in a room with somebody who just is going to beat the crap out of them. But they're going to blame the auditor. That's going to be the auditor's fault. But then again, Jenna, because she was in trouble, they blamed her for it. I mean, they can't make up their minds whose fault it is. It's everybody's fault in Scientology. Switch glasses so I can see. Oh, I would have really liked to have had AA or CC from last week in the chat today, because I have questions. So I would like to get, like I said earlier, I'd like to get a hold of them and see if just a chat in the chat, just to kind of do a Q&A on a few things. I wanted to know, because Cece, I believe, said that, I think it's she, because I can't see the icons, got in 1974 without reading Dianetics. So just went in, and I didn't ask enough about, well, how did that happen? How did you get in? We're here to find out and try to understand, what people found in this book or Scientology, what initially got them in. We know what keeps them in. The re-stimulation of trauma, the coercion, the pressure, the not letting them think for themselves and constantly working. We know what keeps them there, but getting people that get in, I'm always curious about that story. Dusty, I wonder how many times an e-meter has malfunctioned and shocked the living piss out of the person holding the cans. I bet that's happened. Hopefully there's not enough. Doesn't it just take some batteries, or do you plug it in? I'm not even sure. But funny side note, my dog got shocked night before last. So every once in a while we have to figure out how they're coming in, but we have mouse traps that are electric, and they go in, there's peanut butter, and they get shocked. And somehow they got in, we put it between 2 appliances, and it's been there for a while, But somehow, we think Daisy helped, the big one, got it out. And all I heard was, "Ah!" And she ran in here. And the only way to get in there and touch both metal plates to get the shock, the only way would have been her snout and her long tongue. So her tongue got shocked by 2 C batteries. Hi, Kenny. So that was kind of funny. I called my husband and we were he's like, "Is she okay?" I'm like, "Well, she didn't have a heart attack, so I think she's okay." Poor thing. So 110 volt. Ooh. I've been shocked by 110 when I was a kid. Our medicine cabinet light had a short, and I went in there to brush my teeth, and it shocked the bejesus out of me. I still remember how that felt in my arms. So, yeah. If they don't have a heart problem, it wouldn't like hurt them or kill them, but man, it does not feel good. Adam, at the end of his life, Hubbard wanted an e-meter built to shock. Yeah, that was true. That's true. He talked to somebody about building him one. I think he did build it, but it didn't work. I'm not sure about that though. It's things I kind of remember, but I'm not 100%. But yeah, he wanted to drop the body. He had a lot of illness. I'm finding this out where I think he was manic depressive. I really do. Other than his physical illness, because he would go from, raging lunatic to curled up in the fetal position crying all throughout his life. He would have several days where he would do that. And that just and they call it bipolar now, but it's the same thing. You go manic, where you want to change the world and you have grandiose ideas and you write prolifically, and then you drop to your depressive state, which is the bottom of the gamut, and you curl up in a ball and you cry. So that makes a lot of sense too, if he was bipolar. And what I'm finding out about how he did that, and even one of his wives, the one that went to prison for him, Mary Sue, who wrote a lot of programs and stuff for OSA, I think. Anyway, Dianetics said that she could be heard screaming at him, telling him he was, I forget the exact words, but pretty much he was full of shit and a piece of garbage. She used different words. I just can't remember what they were. And yet she was the one that believed enough to go to prison for him. Oh, yes. Yes, I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to do a short video on just his mental illness. And he said there's probably many cult leaders that have had temporal lobe epilepsy. And it causes a whole gamut of things that, yeah. I read about, I studied that too. I didn't go into his illnesses or we just did the history of the Dianetics, how he got into Dianetics and what he studied to create it, and then Scientology. I didn't do a big thing about just him, and I want to do one just about his mental illness, what people think he had. Of course, nobody knows for sure. But it sounds like he had malignant narcissism, he had temporal lobe epilepsy, and he was possibly bipolar. Wow. I would like to know what his life was like when he was born. Like, how much more, did he get good nutrition? Did he get with doctors? Or because temporal lobe epilepsy, doesn't just happen. But I'm just curious about a lot of that. But yeah, the statement was because of what temporal lobe epilepsy causes you to act like or be, that probably many cult leaders could have had it. And I thought that was kind of interesting. John Atack, man, he knew. He studied for 50 years. He has studied, either he was in Scientology, he has studied LRH, he has studied, the Scientology, and not just like other people have, just a biography. He literally has like a ridiculous amount of documentation, like just documents that he puts together with other things to get the full picture. So yeah, I definitely want to delve into one of John Atack's books, or possibly, if you guys are interested, let me know. Just having the full interview, and like, just I pick the parts out that are interesting, and I could bring it up and we could talk about it. But yeah, I think I really do want to do, after this, a piece of blue sky, because I think there's a lot of things, because I didn't hear that statement either. When he opened the first Dianetics Center, right before he opened the doors, he turned and said, okay, let's sell them a piece of blue sky. So every time I hear comments like that, or about the game maker, or about he wanted to smash his name into history, I know 100% he never believed any of his BS. He knew he was a bad person. He knew what he was doing. He knew he was a shyster. He didn't care. Which I think is worse. Worse than thinking you believe something and you're pushing that belief on somebody else. At least you're believing your own BS. This guy knew. He knew it was all bullshit. So, all right. We went a little over an hour. I don't like to keep you guys too long. So, thanks for being here. Let's see. What's next week? Okay. Because we're in an interesting book. The whole book is called Therapy. So, the next chapter is Diagnosis. I'll read the first paragraph. Oh my God. His first paragraph is the whole page. Dude, punctuation. One of the most important contributions of Dianetics is the resolution of the problem of diagnosis in the field of aberration. This is going to be interesting. Let's see how many pages it is. Oh, and right in the middle. Find out more about Dianetics and yourself. Do the Hubbard Dianetics Extension course. No thanks. All right, this one's a long one. So it'll be one chapter. Ooh, holy crap. It's got freaking diagrams. I'll see if I can scan these diagrams for you guys. And put them up so you guys can see the diagrams that I'm seeing. Holy crap, this is a long chapter. Holy crap. 241 to 259. Woo, that's a long one. All right. And then after that, I want to see what else is coming. Returning the file clerk and the time track. I don't know what that is. That's a long one too. The laws of returning. I don't know what that stuff is. Diagnosis should be interesting. Oh, thanks, Scooter Mom. Yeah, I appreciate that. So next week, Diagnosis, 3 o'clock. I'll see you there.